A very good evening to all our participants. We thank you for joining us on the second edition of Taxutra Dialogues, revolving around the theme of the pandemic, litigation management, and judicial process. Before Arun Sir, Group Editor of Taxutra, and who will also be moderating the session for today, introduces our speakers for the session, I would like to take the opportunity to apprise you all that in the last 10 minutes of the webinar, our speaker will host a dedicated question and answer session. For this, you may post your queries in the chat box, which is located on the bottom right of your screen. Also requesting all participants to kindly keep their videos on mute. I now hand it over to Arun sir.
Thanks, Tanaya, and it indeed is a special evening. At Tax Sutra Dialogues we launched last month with Queen's Counsel Philip Baker, and we said this is going to be a thought leadership series in the middle of a pandemic, maybe once in a lifetime event. We call it Black Swan. Someone as one of the most renowned financial markets expert, Ray Dalio, said that he couldn't see this coming. He couldn't foresee the impact that it would have on the capital markets, on the financial markets, on corporate profits, and we're seeing that over the last 3 to 4 months. So while we've been doing a lot of webinars on the technical side, including decoding the COVID impact on GST, on transfer pricing, and on whatnot, so many technical topics, almost 50 webinars we've clocked in the last 3.5 months. Tax Sutra Dialogues is quite special. We request thought leaders to join us. People who reach the pinnacle of success in their respective professions, and to tell us how they see the world unfolding, so that we could see the world through their eyes. We could be enlightened as to what awaits us, because there are so many changes that are happening. It wouldn't be a misnomer or out of place to say that the world has been upended for so many of us, for businesses, for individuals, for so many sectors, and I think professions or professionals have been no different. The legal profession has been no different, and why it matters is not just because 2.2 million lawyers in India their livelihood depends on the legal profession, but because the justice delivery system, when you have 3 crore pending cases at various levels in this country, over 3 crores, then it means that almost every fourth or fifth Indian possibly is a stakeholder in the justice delivery system. So therefore, this Tax Sutra Dialogue in this session over the next 40 to 45 minutes, we are joined by a former Solicitor General and legal senior advocate, Mr. Mohan Parasaran. He is joining us from Chennai. I am joined by Lakshmi Kumaran Sridhan partner, Mr. L. Badri Narayanan. Badri is a dear friend and one of the sharpest professionals. So Badri and I are going to put some googlies to Mohan sir, but we'll also try to keep it a little light. Mohan sir is known for his remarkable wit and humor, not only in the courtroom, but not only off the courtroom, but also in the courtroom. Maybe some anecdotes we'll hear from him. But Mohan sir, when he was the Additional Solicitor General, then Solicitor General, from the time from 2004 to 14, when he was the ASG and SG, so many cases, including Vodafone, including Aditya Birla Nuvo, one of those very rare lawyers who took to not only constitutional law, which he's done for over 3.5 decades, but even tax law, right from the cases of Kalyana Mandapam to Vodafone to Aditya Birla Nuvo to Sanofi. You name the tax cases and Mohan sir has done it. So he can straddle any branch of law effortlessly. And his first case, I'll never forget, he told me once, one of his first big cases was the two symbols, the famous two symbols case of AIADMK, which is the leading political party in Tamil Nadu. And when the then Chief Minister, Mr. MGR, died, to represent and get that two symbols for late Miss Jayalalitha. And that was at the age of 30 or 32, if I'm not mistaken. So he's someone who has landmark cases to his credit from the time he was young, and he'll have a lot of advice for young lawyers as well. On that note, I hand it over to Badri, because our first theme for the day, the theme for the evening, is the pandemic, litigation management, and judicial process. A lot of it is going to revolve around a topic or around an area which all of us have had to grapple with, including Tax Sutra, which is virtual hearings. So, Badri, you want to set the context on how the virtual hearings have gone in the last 2 to 3 months, and then maybe Mohan sir, we can ask Mohan sir some searching questions around that.
Thank you, Arun, and for inviting me for this session. It's indeed a privilege for me to be part of a session with Mr. Mohan Parasharan. Mohan Parasharan has been a very close friend of ours and of my father. And my father, of course, decided to do the legal profession because of Mr. Parasharan Senior. So we have great respect for him, his family, and whatever we have been able to achieve is to large extent attributable to their family. So with these comments, I will start before Mr. Parasharan sir takes over. Virtual hearing has become almost a norm now, and we will hear a little bit more from sir. And over the last few months, what was considered to be a temporary position, not taken with much seriousness, is turning out to be something which is going to last for a longer period of time in terms of the pandemic. I think virtual hearings are now to stay. And in our own experiences, there have been very interesting anecdotes with respect to virtual hearings. And I will not go into this for today. You want to hear Mr. Mohan Parasharan. This is a very unprecedented time, as Arun stated. Nobody and no one could have ever imagined a small disease originating in a small city called Wuhan in China is going to bring the entire world to its knees. Okay. It is indeed something which has brought the judicial delivery system to its knees, and it requires great thought leadership to take it from here. With these opening comments, I will hand over to Mr. Mohan Parasharan. Sir, if you could open with your statement, your thoughts on what is this pandemic, where we are heading with these hearings, what is the nature of the virtual hearings, and where you see the path going forward. If you could give us an opening statement, and then we can engage in a few more dialogues. Sir. Over to you, sir.
Yes, I'm also very happy to participate in this seminar with this sort of a team. And now virtual world has come to become a reality. And this pandemic is not going to leave us so easily. And therefore, virtual courts have and are going to become a reality. And we have to actually quickly adjust and create a permanent infrastructure, a permanent base at a macro level. Now what's been happening is, I think we have been doing it, I think due to a knee-jerk reaction at different levels by framing ad hoc rules and conducting virtual hearings for very urgent matters. And so far, no regular hearings are taking place in any court. And only, I think, few criminal matters, a few public interest litigations, and very few commercial matters where urgent interim orders are required are being taken up. And this cannot actually go on forever, because this will greatly affect the functioning of the economy. And not only there are commercial matters, there are so many other matters in the queue, including very important PILs concerning life and liberty, and so many other cases in various levels, at various levels. And we have to look at the entire country. Therefore, what I would feel is, let us look at the constitutional scheme. We'll have to look at the administration of justice as a whole. And we'll have to set in motion a virtual world to tackle hearing of disputes at all levels, further create infrastructure which is seamless, which can be understood even by a common man. We'll have to create an infrastructure where applications are user-friendly, are available to a common man who does not feel only the elite can approach or have access to the virtual world. Even in the legal system, there is a feeling that the elitist lawyers have hijacked the virtual courts. And many lawyers complain that they are not able to manage with this system, and they are not conversant with this sort of a technology. And so many things are happening, no? Including violation of dress code. And they are simply not able to file the cases properly, because e-filing is also a very ticklish technical art. And actually, you'll have to, first of all, create a proper training network, no? Or create a proper software. So we have not actually given a thought. Therefore, what I would actually say is, the government has been concentrating on COVID recovery and lockdown, when lockdown is to be removed in a particular state, and how are we going to tackle the Chinese problem, etc. But with regard to court management is concerned, I think the courts should become more aggressive. And they should actually, the courts should start immediately framing rules at a pan-India level. What I would say is, for instance, each high court is now starting to frame rules. They may actually run counter to each of them. One high court may follow some procedure, some other high court may follow some other procedure. Likewise, different courts will be having different platforms. You know?
Understand, sir.
So, some high courts will be having a better platform. There should be a uniform platform also, for the sake of seamless convenience. Therefore, the Supreme Court should immediately convene an All India Conference of Chief Justices of High Courts and frame a rule, uniform rule, which will govern functioning of the virtual high courts throughout the country, and which will regulate the functioning, the filing mechanism, and also the hearing mechanism, and also deal with how can be seamless. No? They can also involve experts so that you will have to tackle, I think, preparation of easy software for the purpose of filing. And one big problem which has always been coming across my mind is, I think most of these lawyers do not even have the facility of a laptop or a computer. You must know, you must go to rural areas to find it out. No? We are all actually sitting in Delhi or Chennai or Bombay. But if you go to outskirts, I think possibly they might be having not even an advanced mobile phone.
And sir, you also had some thoughts on a very important point, and then of course Badri may want to elaborate on the role of the bar. But so you wanted to say that on subordinate courts, when we chatted in the morning, that you can't leave out the subordinate courts in this entire discussion. All the discussion so far has been around Supreme Court and the High Courts.
Yeah, I'm slowly coming to it. No, I'm going step by step. I'm just now going to rural areas. See, when I come to Supreme Court, High Courts, High Courts and Supreme Court should act in tandem and frame rules. Likewise, the High Court under the Constitution, under the scheme of the Constitution, is actually the court which is responsible and supervises the subordinate courts in every state. They should in turn actually seek to frame rules for the functioning of these subordinate courts in each state, and frame rules likewise for the effective functioning of virtual courts, criminal and civil courts in the
Yes, sir.
states, in the concerned state. And
Sir, I wanted to stop you for 1 minute only, and I think you hit very very interesting points. One with respect to the fact that how the virtual hearings are being conducted, how it is being seen as being something which elitist or this thing, and where, for example, there is not harmony between the different courts. I want to get, because many of our people who are going to be on this call may never have seen a virtual hearing, because many of them are chartered accountants, many of them are tax lawyers, many of them have been lawyers but have not had an opportunity because they don't have an urgent matter and so on and so forth. If you could give some instances of a virtual hearing that you have done, okay, what you felt in the virtual hearings.
what I'll tell you, virtual hearing, initially there are all teething problems, even in the Supreme Court.
Yes, sir.
Now, what they do is, I think you are actually told only the previous night, the cost list actually comes out, and the court is actually known as the virtual court number so and so, item number so and so, and the timing is also given, and the advocate and record would actually be sent the link also.
Okay, sir.
And the advocate and record will then pass on the link. Actually, it will not be given to more than 2 advocates, the concerned advocate and record and the appearing counsel.
Okay, sir.
The court officer. And then actually we have to then use that link and log in, and the court officer will be in full control. We can't actually mute or unmute as far as the Supreme Court is concerned.
Okay.
And we'll be just told 3 or 4 minutes before the matter reaches that you will have to log in now.
Okay.
And sometimes I found that by the time you log in, I think your matter has reached. No?
Always, Supreme Court likes to keep us on our toes, so to say. Even virtually, they're keeping us on our toes.
Yeah, and sometimes actually you don't get the link also.
Oh.
That was initially that was the problem. And even if you get the link, you will not be seen by the judge.
Yes, sir.
Oh no, and even if you are seen by the judge will not be able to hear you.
Okay.
So these were the problems. Now I think we are slowly improving. The Supreme Court is now slowly improving, and these kind of, I think, teething problems have been slowly sorted out. But I think they should actually try to improve the technology first. No?
What about your experience with high courts, sir? Yeah, you also appearing in so many high courts. Which high courts are which high courts you feel are you find it a little bit more challenging even now?
See, I think Delhi High Court, each judge is adopting their own approach. No? Some judges, I think I don't find they're quite well versed with the technology.
Yeah, because Delhi High Court always been has always been the forefront of technology when it comes to courts.
But as you were telling in the morning, no, sometimes the judge actually opens the brief, the pleadings.
Yes.
And also opens everything, the case law. Therefore, the screen is fully covered.
Yeah.
And the judge is not able to see the lawyer, nor we are able to see the judge. The screen is blocked.
I understand.
And unless and until the judge and the lawyer see each other, I think there won't be proper interaction. No? See, one.
So how would you
preempted my.
How would
so in fact, Badri, I just want to continue on that thread. Did you feel in any of the cases in the last 3-4 months, if this were in person, I could have convinced the judge, and brought the judge around. Did you feel that the courtroom drama, there are some lawyers, of course, who thrive on theatrics, and not mere theatrics, but theatrics apart from the the legal acumen. But sir, did you feel in the last few months, oh, these cases, this should have been in person? I would have brought the judge around.
Yeah, I think it has happened. I think I got a feeling in one matter where I thought I could have turned him around, possibly if I had made a personal appearance before court, no? And the hearing was being disturbed by technological problems. And he had come with a particular mind. And somehow I think I got some relief, but I would have got a better relief if I was actually physically appearing before him.
I understand. So therefore, just to kind of continue from there, what do you think the courts can do to make physical appearance better? One, on the judge's side, because as you know, that literally the entire screen goes away and it is in pleadings and case law compilation, whatever you share, and then there are links given to AOR and all. Put, for example, a separate, is there any way in which you think we can improve the situation to make it a little bit more similar to what we are used to? That is where we have an entire screen for ourselves, or some kind of a suggestion that you have in mind with respect to doing this virtual hearing, how to do this better?
I think the judges, I think, should understand, they should actually try to adjust.
I understand.
See, it is actually only the way how I think each person approaches. You can always manage. See, if you want to actually see your comfort, you can create problems for others. No? Actually, everything has a limitation.
Understand.
But therefore, you have to actually. This has also got some limitations. You can't have 4 screens. Your limitation is 1 screen.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
I think in that, I think you will have to do your best, and see that actually a proper hearing is given. And you can always go through the pleadings. You can say, stop a minute, or just wait, counsel, wait for a minute. Then go through the pleadings and again continue,
Understand, sir.
Yeah.
Understand. So I just want to move from there to, for example, another point that you said, that these virtual hearings are considered to be kind of an elitist kind of a proposal, with most of the people who are common lawyers are not able to achieve. You yourself have heard of people coming to you and saying that it is not a fair system or we are not able to manage. What are the things that you think the court can do? Because obviously the just ultimate person who is going to oversee the entire judicial delivery system is the judges, the courts, and then it's going to be the bar councils and bar associations. How do you think that some of the things can be done to improve this? What are your thoughts on virtual hearings and how it should be run?
I agree with you. Anything which comes for the first time, there is bound to be resistance. But I personally feel, I think this is the best system, because actually now the world is actually becoming smaller and smaller. And this actually is so advantageous because it saves you on travel costs, it saves your time, and it saves clients money because they also need not travel, and it saves paperwork, and you can actually save so many things, and you can also actually be very fast. You can dispose of matters, you can be actually more focused. In a virtual hearing, you can be more focused than in an actual court where there's a lot of disturbance. And people are now very time conscious.
Very good,
because actually the call is fixed for a particular time. Therefore, you start at that time. Now we have started at exactly at 5 p.m. If suppose we had put Mohan Parasharan will deliver a lecture at 5 p.m. at so and so hall, I would have been late by 25 minutes. Blame the traffic.
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
that's a fair point, sir. Okay.
Yeah.
Just kind of coming from there, sir.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Sure. No, I was just wondering that sir also mentioned about elitist lawyers, and I couldn't resist coming back to that. Sir, but has it also had an effect on say the fees being charged by the senior counsels? We are told astronomical sums on.
Let me tell, see a simple thing, Previously, we are a council based in Delhi. So whenever we used to be engaged in other high courts, for instance, Bombay High Court or any other court, Rajasthan High Court, or if we come to Pune for a great matter, then our fees will be, I think, a king's ransom. It will be anywhere between, say, 35 lakhs to, say, even 60 lakhs per day. And plus traveling charges, a separate fee for junior, then the hotel charges, clerkage, etc., plus transportation. So the client will have to shell out. One trip will cost you at least 1 crore for a very high-range lawyer like Amitabh or Shah Rukh Khan. But now I can't do the same thing, because there's no element of travel involved. Why I charged 35 lakhs to 60 lakhs was, if I travel outside Delhi, I'll be losing briefs in Delhi. I would have lost 4 or 5 cases in Delhi. Therefore, I need to be compensated. Therefore, for that purpose, I was charging more. Now, I stay back in my own hometown. I don't travel out. I'm sitting in my own office. I also appear in Delhi. Therefore, why the hell I should charge the same fees, 35 lakhs, 40 lakhs, and 50 lakhs? I should charge the same fee as to what I charge for cases in Delhi and treat the cases on par for every state. I can't charge higher fees for Bombay, Rajasthan, or Delhi, or some other state. Therefore, I was surprised to hear that some lawyers were still following the old practice. But I changed it immediately. I said, we have to answer our conscience. We have to actually change ourselves. And clients are also not fools. They know, and particularly everybody is facing a financial problem. We should also, I think, be accommodative and be reasonable. That's why I think some lawyers are called elitists. Merely because you can hold some people to ransom, that means you are carrying a restrictive trade practice.
Understand, sir. So just wanted to kind of move from there. And I know, Arun, you're very excited and you're going to ask more questions. But I wanted to continue on from there. After this pandemic is over, do you still feel that some amount of this virtual hearings will continue? That is one. And second, as judges and bar, what are the ways in which you think we can assist the lawyers in the community to be able to be equipped for this? Is there, for example, anything we can make in terms of applications or anything which can help them? Because like you said, many of them don't have laptops, they still do traditional work and other things. So just wanted to get a sense from you whether virtual hearings will continue beyond this pandemic, one, and what can the bar councils do?
See, virtual hearings, I think, will continue. I think in respect of some specified categories of cases. I think possibly in cases where I think prisoners will have to be brought to courts. That was already happening even earlier. Remand cases. So they will be produced before a virtual court.
Understand, sir.
And also, I think probably commercial causes and cases for urgent interim reliefs. They will all be. They can. I think they court. I think court with some common sense, I think, should categorize cases and see that they are heard only by virtual courts. But trials, criminal trials, regular trials, civil trial, where witnesses will have to be examined, cross-examined, they should be heard by actual courts.
Understand, sir. Because you need to see the body language, you need to see how they're reacting.
But you,
Evidence
you
has to be seen properly.
demeanor of the witness.
Yeah.
Because we cases
Understand
are
that.
seen by seeing the demeanor of the witness. No?
So in
And
your view, tax cases are ideal for virtual hearings.
yeah, tax cases, yeah. Yeah, I agree, yeah. But the demeanor of lawyers are very important, I say, tax matters. But what I say is, the bar has to play a very important role, I say. We also discussed about that. I think leading members of the bar associations, etc., will have to keep the confidence level of the have-nots high. And they should actually try to build a corpus fund and see that, I think, people who have belonged to weaker sections among the practicing members, they also have the facility to avail the essential items like a smartphone or a laptop, etc. And they should be given a financial aid.
Yeah.
And they should actually provide facilities to the various bar associations.
Yeah.
They can actually fund the bar associations. So associations can have facilities at every level, not necessarily the high courts, at district levels. No, each associations have great facilities, so that I think it will pave the way of a seamless virtual hearing. No?
So you think the government needs to provide a budget for some of these things? I mean, if you look at the tribunals, the law ministry has hardly provided any budget for so many tribunals. You know, even some of them even today function out of dilapidated buildings. You think the government needs to provide a much larger budget if you want to go the e-court way?
I think government's priority is something else. This is, I think, our own Atma Nirbhar, no? It's Atma
Very well put,
Nirbhar
sir.
legal profession.
I can understand, sir. All of us are part of it, and we have to take care of it.
Yeah.
And on this, sir, I'm going to move to the second part of our discussion. You've nicely brought it to a place where you've come to a point where the bar is supposed to help to this thing. We have many members today who have joined, who are all young members of the bar, and who all aspire to become like you and others in the bar who have reached a certain level of reputation. So I thought this is a good way, whether virtual hearing or not. I think some of the things that you've achieved over the years through your hard work and your legal acumen is going to remain an important component of this. And you've always been an advocate of giving your place up for somebody younger and smarter and more hardworking to take your place. So I wanted to hear your journey, sir. If you can just tell us a little bit about your legal journey, how you came about it, and then maybe you can talk to us a little bit of your thoughts on how the legal profession should develop in the future.
See, I actually finished my post-graduation from Cambridge and really wanted to start practice in the Supreme Court. But by sheer accident, started practice in Madras, in Chennai. Then it was called Madras. Because my younger brother was not keeping so well. Therefore, my father requested me to go to Chennai and stay for some time. Then I thought I should not waste time and started attending the Madras High Court. And then I started appearing in few matters. I think, strangely, I think one of our close family friends, Mr. B. Sriramalu, who is a criminal lawyer, he had some great confidence in me and started giving me criminal cases. No? I actually did not even dream, because I never had any idea to practice the criminal side. And I started on the criminal side and did quite well on the criminal side and did some referred trials also, because those days referred trials, it was a very hard task. No, it was very difficult. And you have to go through lots of papers, evidences, etc. And I've seen great lawyers arguing referred trials while studying law. One of them was, I think, Mr. V.T. Rangasamy Iyengar, who was just, I think, retiring. He used to open the case. He will not even touch a paper. He will state the facts, entire facts, beautifully like a story for 45 minutes. And the judge will be completely floored, no? The first 45 minutes itself. So with that sort of a training, and I think I was actually helped by so many seniors, no? Because those days the bar was so friendly. So many seniors used to help me. I used to get doubts clarified in criminal law from so many people. And then actually writ petitions started coming. I built up lots of practice on the writ side. In fact, I wanted to join some seniors. I wanted to join Ms. Habibullah Badsha. Then it just went on like it. I suddenly got good work. Then suddenly, I think this liquor policy of MGR had come into play, where I think the state itself took over the business of running liquor. That was challenged in a batch. Then abolition of races, horse racing, take over the Madras Race Club. In that matter, I was engaged. So I think I started appearing in those matters, and the Marquis scandal in Kerala. G. Ramaswamy was appearing. The late GR was leading in that matter, and he was gracious to actually take me as a junior in that matter. That gave me a good exposure. I think lots of seniors, I think, helped me, and I'm so grateful to them. And because of that, I was able to develop my career. But one has to actually do a lot of hard work, perseverance. I think perseverance is 99%. Hard work. I used to, I think, work till about 10:30, 11 every day. After that, I used to start dictating matters to be filed in court next day. That used to go on till about 2 a.m. Then those days it was only typewriter. The steno will bring the draft. Draft means what? It's a fair copy only. It's mistakes. So he'll bring it at about 6:37 in the morning. There'll be 7 or 8 matters. So I'll make some small corrections. It will be filed by 11:30, 12. That was the way of life, no? So that actually gave a lot of inspiration, and people were impressed by that sort of working. And it's and also grace of God, I say.
I understand,
No,
sir.
but
Any
some
memorable
of these-
cases you want to talk about, sir? Any of these? One
Yeah,
or
so
two
especially
of them,
I
you can tell
wanted to
us?
ask about the Vodafone case. I mean, sir,
Mr.
if I were
Arun,
to ask
always
about,
you are talking about Arun.
okay,
Vodafone
we'll
only you
leave
have in
Vodafone
mind.
today. We'll leave Vodafone because 10 years, But anyway, let me ask you, sir, about
You always
rather than
find
your.
some reason to bring
No,
Vodafone
we
in.
will not.
So
We will not. We will not.
I'm going to ask
Though I
Tanaya to
was
mute
with,
you.
though.
Okay.
No, we will
And
not.
I'm going to ask him, sir, any memorable, one or two memorable cases that you can tell us? Preferably not linked to tax, because Arun has covered everything in tax.
Yeah, actually, the case pertaining to abolition of horse racing came before the Supreme Court, and that came up for final hearing. And if I had a chance to argue, it is the team for the petitioners was a very peculiar combination. No, father was appearing; he was the lead counsel.
I know that, sir.
Rohinton Nariman was the second counsel. I was the third counsel, and it was heard by Justice Kuldeep Singh. Then, see, we were arguing two sets of appeals. One was actually abolition of racing, abolition of horse races, on the ground that it was gambling. Second was takeover of the Madras racing undertaking, because Supreme Court had granted stay in that matter of the abolition of racing. So when the stay order was in force, they took over the race club. So that was challenged. The acquisition of the Madras Racing Undertaking as unconstitutional. So Kuldeep Singh was, and on this side, we had Mr. Ashok Desai, Mr. Anil Diwan, Mr. Shanti Bhushan. And first question Mr. Kuldeep Singh asked was, seeing Mr. Senior Parasran, he was shocked. He told Mr. Parasran Senior, I am no way surprised to see Rohington and Mohan appearing. But how can you appear for in support of racing? Then father told, I think people have not seen my other side. I used to be, I never used to go for actual racing, but I used to send my clerk, give him 10 rupees every Saturday and 10 rupees every Sunday. Only pick up horses according to the star of that particular day and play. And then he argued, but we argued some technical point. That is actually, we are playing only with the totalizator. There is no question of actually betting or gambling in that sense.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. And
that was a very, very brilliant point, sir. I remember reading those cases.
Yeah.
The UK judgments you had taken out to explain,
UK
for example, why it is not in the nature of between two people. It is not a wager in that regard. And it is really to a totalizator.
And therefore, we said it does not come under the provisions of the Madras City Police Act. And it is actually taking place in an enclosure.
Yeah. And
therefore, it has come under the Madras City Police Act. And we succeeded. But the newspapers carried wrongly, as usual, the media projected Supreme Court holds horse racing as not gambling. So public were quite amazed, So that was a very interesting case.
Yeah, and so your experience of it's a birth centenary year of probably the greatest lawyer born, on this land in this country, Mr. Nani Palkhiwala, one of the doyens of the bar. Sir, would you any experiences? You would have been young when you entered the bar.
Yeah. So in fact, I had very, very, very personal experiences. I became rather emotional. No, it was only because of my connection with the Kanchi Mutt, and he was also a trustee of the Dharma Rakshana Trust, which was actually sponsored by Kanchi Paramacharya. And he used to come for treatment to Shankara Nethralaya at Chennai. And I used to go to the airport to pick him up in Chennai. Those days I was having a red Maruti car, Maruti 800. And for him, the Taj group, there used to be big paraphernalia, He used to come with his wife. They used to be waiting. And he used to, his appointment will be with Dr. Badrinath, primarily. But as soon as he saw me, oh, Parasran, you are here. Then he'll say, come, where is your car? He'll get into my Maruti 800. He'll ask the Mercedes Benz to follow. Such a simple person. And we'll go for the meeting next morning. Dr. Badrinath also will accompany, but this time I'll be traveling in his car for the meeting with Dr. Badrinath. And those were days which I can never forget. What an amount of knowledge. What a great karma yogi, I say. He was a karma yogi. Simplicity, absolute simplicity, And I think he can never think of anything ill. He can never think of ill of anybody. He can only think of good of everyone. He used to praise everybody, I say.
So in terms of, Badri mentioned in the beginning, you come from a very illustrious family. Your grandfather was a lawyer. Your father, again, the sort of letters that we've seen written by Mr. Palkhiwala to your father, then Attorney General of the country, before that Solicitor General, So, and before that, Advocate General of Tamil Nadu. So, in terms of your court style, the styles, what is it that you would say you picked up from senior sir, and or would you say they are completely contrasting styles?
My style is completely different from senior. I would rather say my younger brother is actually typical of my father. He follows, his style is actually very, very identical. My style is totally different. They say possibly I've taken after my mother's father. I'm not sure.
We have some questions, Badri, some comments
Yeah,
and
I think
questions. Can we
again,
take them?
so I thought, yeah, I think we have very good time, sir. Thank you so much, sir. Now
Yeah.
we're going to take you to question answer,
Yeah.
and I think all of us will have questions that our viewers want to ask. So go ahead, Arun. Why don't you take on the question?
There are a few which have already come. So one says, we find that the Honorable Apex Court is busy in many PILs and giving bails at odd times to politicians, and hardly tax cases are disposed. This is a paid on for tax lawyer. On the one hand, tax litigations are piling up, blocking several thousands of crores of rupees, and both revenue and tax litigants are living in uncertainty for decades together. Can't the Apex Court, with the support of the government, appointed a dedicated tax bench and start disposing tax litigation? It is needless to say that once the Apex Court decides the matter, similar matters pending across the high courts in India also get disposed.
Yeah, I fully agree. They in fact had a dedicated tax bench. And even now, I think, see, now this is the best Supreme Court, I say. Now we have the most eminent judges who can hear tax matters. In fact, we had Justice Sikri, Justice Lokur, and now we have Justice Rohington Nariman, Justice Chandrachud. I think other judges as well, about 3 or 4. I don't want to name everybody. And I think if any one of them is interested, I think matters will be disposed of even if they are sitting in the virtual court.
Yeah. So
I think it depends upon the master of the roles,
So the next one is, it says, though the question is out of syllabus, we will be highly obliged to hear from Shri Parasaran about IBC proceedings consequent to the pandemic. This is vis-a-vis an insolvency professional, because since the IBC proceed,
IBC, I think in our country, I personally feel only because of knee-jerk reaction for everything. I think a pandemic situation is created for anything, no? And of course, there is a problem, financial problem, but this could have been, for that you cannot take an extreme step, no? Now I think suspending the provisions, again, I think is a retrograde step, no? For that, I think he could have provided something else, some other alternative measure, no?
Yeah. So at least 3 to 4 people have already asked me, saying that could Mohan sir share his experience of the Vodafone case. And one person specifically asked, what do you think was the game changer in that case?
Game changer was Justice Kapadia. See, he actually suddenly brought in the concept of the Lukács doctrine, and form versus substance. He actually sought to fall for the principle of form over substance. And now, in hindsight, I think the approach of the Supreme Court has proved to be completely erroneous. No, with whatever is happening in BEPS and at the level of UN, all the treaties which are now happening, I think the world has changed, no?
So you think 10 years after the case, next year will be 10 years that after the Vodafone judgment has been delivered, that famous look at judgment. So do you think that you will get one more shot at the cherry? Though you're on this side, sir, do you think, sir, that this principle will get reversed? Do you think so?
I think so. There are 2 or 3 matters pending in the Supreme Court. I don't want to name those cases. And there will be a good chance for the Supreme Court to review the Vodafone verdict in those matters.
Yeah.
And I think, I not know, I think the combination of judges also, I think we not know for which combination is going to go.
I leave that Vodafone part, sir, with just one line question. Sir, did the emotions run high, sir, in that case for you and for others?
I never get emotional for any matter. I never became emotional. We should never actually get attached, I say, with anything. That's my policy, I say.
So the next question is from a young lawyer who says, a young budding lawyer. He says, I intend to take a sanat from Bar Council in this year. New law practitioners like me feel the lack of seeing stalwarts like you in action, attend live courtroom hearings and learn from them. How do we rectify this, sir?
No, actually, now we have to improve the system also. Virtual court system also we have to improve. I think to allow particularly the legal fraternity and interns to also participate, more public participation, because principle of dispensation of justice is that it should be open and fair. And I think there are to create some platform. Now it is actually available to press. I think slowly the technology will improve. No?
I think
So
also,
the next
Arun,
one is we have
yeah,
2
I
more,
think a lot
Badri,
more
but just 2
okay,
more.
no issues.
Yeah.
Sure.
Rarely do we get Mohan, sir. So I want to take this occasion to, the matters before tribunal, high court, Supreme Courts are supposed to be public hearings. If there is one-on-one interactions between judges and lawyers, can these be called public hearings? How do we create courtroom atmosphere in a virtual hearing and increase the participation? Maybe we'll have to start playing music in the background.
Yeah, see, now actually even weddings take place online, I say. Therefore, I think we have to change accordingly, with the bride and bridegroom sitting elsewhere in different places,
Yeah, Zohaib wants to ask a question, but I request Tanaya to please, unmute Zohaib so that Zohaib can ask that question directly. Zohaib is one of the brightest young lawyers around, and he, of course, started his career with Mohan sir. Can you unmute Zohaib, Tanaya?
It was a pleasure hearing you, sir. One question I wanted to ask you for a very long time. So
Okay.
How do you manage to keep a cool head even in the most stressful situation, which is impossible for most senior advocates in the country? I've noticed most senior advocates either get BP or get some other diseases in these high stress environment, but I've always seen you managing it with a cool head, sir.
I do not know, sir. I think right from my childhood, I've been like that, and I think possibly because of some training. I won't say I'm very well versed with Shastras or scriptures like my father or grandfather, but to some extent, I've been taught Shastras, particularly Bhagavad Gita and other Dharma Shastras. So you must always actually keep a distance. You must try to actually keep away. That is yourself from what you do, and never get attached with anything. That's a very difficult practice. Detachment is the key,
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah, there's one question on why is the online hearings at the court not getting video recorded, at least which are not chamber hearings or in camera? Why are they not getting video recorded?
Video recording, the court, we do not know whether they are recording by themselves, but public can't record it, no? Because so far, I think even the issue of live telecast, the Supreme Court, I think, initially went completely all out in favor of a live telecast. Then it took a U-turn. Therefore, I think possibly following the same, they will not be for a live recording.
And the last one is a comment. After that, I won't take any questions because there are quite a few more, but we can't. We're already at 5:56. It says police doesn't stop crime alone. The judiciary is needed. If it remains shut, it means law and order wing is clipped. Courts should open. But I have nothing to say on that, sir. But it's a comment.
I fully agree with you, but courts should also be very proactive. I would also like to say that I think there is a general feeling that to some extent courts have been slightly, I think, defensive. And that impression should be removed as quickly as possible. And with this set of judges, if the Supreme Court is not proactive, I think personal liberty will be at great jeopardy. But now I think there is a change, I think. But still I feel, I think the court should, I think, open up and the run rate should increase. In cricketing parlance, no?
Can we have one word before we close from Mr. P.R. Ramesh, former Deloitte India chairman, one of the leading professionals in this country, a stalwart. Can we have one comment from sir, since sir is here? And the last, sir, if I mean, we can share it now. I think all our last public interactions, sir, over the last the outing was a day before the lockdown with Ramesh sir, and what I think I was fortunate enough to have spent the evening with both of them together. In the most scenic place, Lonavala. So yeah, this is a virtual reconvening or re-meeting of all of us. Can you please unmute P.R. Ramesh sir?
Yeah, thank you. Sorry, I'm very late into this because I was in a board program and I just got over, missed everything. My real, I have a question in a way. You know, I come from a profession where there is a clamor for independent oversight. So the question I have, and I still recall Nani Palkiwala in 1986 when he addressed the conference of the Institute of Chartered Accountants, he asked the question, who shaves the barber? And he said he complimented the institute on having a very good self-regulation mechanism. But today the whole public perception is self-regulation is not the order of the day. So in the judicial system or in the amongst the advocates, what sort of independent oversight is there, if at all, or should it be there?
I think it's a very good question, but there is the ombudsman system is not present world over. There's a problem, no? And they fear that will affect the independence of the judiciary. That might even affect they immediately come out by saying that it will affect the basic structure of the constitution. That is why even with regard to appointment of judges, the judiciary insulated itself, and Supreme Court actually created the concept of collegium. And nobody can tinker in the process of appointment of judges. Constitution says judges are to be appointed by the President of India, but ultimately the Supreme Court appoints them. Therefore, I think the Supreme Court is more powerful than even all the three Trimurtis, no? And therefore they won't tolerate any other outsider to monitor them. And their greatest weapon is contempt jurisdiction. And but let me also point out, when governments are powerful, you can watch one peculiar scenario in our country. When the governments of the day are very, very powerful, the courts have not been so vocal or eloquent in protecting the fundamental rights.
That means it's a committed judiciary.
Yeah, I will not go to that extent. Somehow I think they tend to believe the government. They say actually this government has got the full support of the people. Therefore, since they have the absolute mandate of the people, we will not exercise the power of judicial review to a great extent.
Badri, any closing question, closing words? It's been a riveting conversation. There are so many people sending messages thanking for having Mohan sir. One of them happens to be from Vidhi Legal, Alok Prasanna, very dear friend. Again, 28 days at the Supreme Court, we all were together during the Vodafone case. He assisted you as well in that matter. He sends his regards, sir. So many of them sending their regards to you.
Thank you.
Badri, any closing thoughts, remarks?
No, I think, like I said, thank you, Arun, for inviting me. I think it's a privilege for me to be able to interact with Mr. Mohan Parasharan. It's been a pleasure, sir, listening to you today. And it's been a pleasure interacting with you earlier today, in where the rest of the people were not there and just the two of us were there. As always, I learn something from you every time I hear you. So thank you again. And I think it's been an absolute marvelous session for all of us. Thank you very much for being with us, sir.
Thank you, all of you. It's also a good experience for me as well. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And we'll be back, of course, with more webinars in the coming days. Friday is one on PMLA. Friday, again at 5 p.m. You wouldn't want to miss that. That is all we have from the second edition of Tax Sutra Dialogues with former Solicitor General and Legal Mr. Mohan Parasharan. What a wonderful session this has been. Thanks, everyone, for your kind audience. Thank you. Stay in, stay safe.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.